Would my review be different if I was not a man? Should artists always take a moralistic stance while creating complex characters or conflicts? Can you learn good things from a bad film? Am I a closet Sandeep Reddy Vanga stan? These are some questions that came to mind after watching Ranbir Kapoor and Rashmika Mandanna's Animal, directed, written and edited by our very own anti-pseudo, anti-woke, anti-subtlety maximalist filmmaker Sandeep Reddy Vanga. हेलो एंड वेलकम टू डू आई लाइक इट, अ शो जहां हम हर बात पे बात करते हैं। और अगर तुम ये एपिसोड एनिमल देखने से पहले देख रहे हो तो तुम थोड़ा फ्रस्ट्रेट हो सकते हो, बिकॉज मैं तुम्हें ये नहीं बताऊंगा कि डू आई एक्चुअली लाइक द फिल्म और नॉट, क्योंकि पार्टली ये मुझे भी खुद नहीं पता। बट इफ यू वॉच द फिल्म एंड आर एज कंफ्यूज्ड एज आई एम, let us come close, let us come together, join hands and find a safe space for people like us. People who kind of like the film but not fully. But we agree that there are some super terrible implications, but we also don't want to hate on a maker for his art यार। आ जाओ, बहुत मजा आएगा। थोड़ी वार्निंग, स्पॉयलर्स तो देखो इस एपिसोड में है ही, but in addition to that, I might delve into some descriptions of emotional and physical violence, depression, anger, etc. So if you're currently struggling with it, please decide whether or not you want to proceed. तो देखो यार, Animal is one of the most confused I've felt after watching a film in some time. Sandeep Reddy Vanga himself is a very complex figure. I liked his debut film Arjun Reddy for its rawness, and I actually bought into the violent love between Arjun and Preeti. I absolutely hated Kabir Singh. I think Shahid Kapoor did a bad job, and it didn't need a Hindi remake at all. And now this. If you've seen any reviews of the film in the past few days, you know by now that it's a deeply violent, misogynistic, and an overall loud film. But ab is sab loudness ke niche, there is a very tender core, which I admit is hard to find because of all the problematic scenes and dialogues like शादी में डर होना चाहिए, और Ranveer asking his wife, "You forgave me for all these murders. Can't you forgive me for sleeping around with someone?" इस सब के बाद you just want to slap Ranveer's character Ranvijay or at least give him your therapist's number. But if, and that's a big if, you manage to momentarily look past all that, and again, one cannot and should not be expected to look past these things. All this woke feminists will hate this film is pure garbage. This film really has some ugly and triggering politics, and let's admit it. But if you somehow manage to look past this ugliness, there might really be a sympathetic exploration of masculinity hidden beneath. Kind of in a Kumbalangi Nights way. See, when I was a child, I had a very rocky relationship with my father. He of course wasn't the multi-billionaire industrialist like Balbir Singh, but similar to him, he also made a few goof-ups like all new parents do in order to raise us better and fulfill his duty as a father, which I can attest to he did very well. As Ranveer says,
My father is the best father in the world.
तो बचपन में जब मेरी उनसे किसी चीज पे लड़ाई होती थी या वो अगर मुझे डांटते थे या कुछ चिल्लाते थे तो आई वुड बी फिल्ड विद रेज, जस्ट लाइक आवर मेन मैन रणविजय हियर। बट ऑब्वियसली उस रेज का अब तुम कर तो सकते नहीं हो कुछ, तो मैं क्या करता था, आई वुड टेक ऑफ माई स्पेक्स और मैं ऐसे तोड़ देता था, और आई वुड पंच अ वॉल और आई वुड पंच अ वुडन कबर्ड। नाउ होल्ड दैट इमोशन. Animal is a 3-hour extrapolation of this punch on a wall. It does not mean anything. It is just blind rage wanting to channelize itself. And in the end, it'll only harm me only, yaar, the person who's doing the violence. But does that mean we should shun this part and label it as violent, selfish and animalistic? Or should we engage with it, explore why it's doing what it is, and maybe then try and help it heal? The biggest question I had after this film was that, is a film what the maker intends it to be, or does the viewer's personal experiences change something he or she sees on the screen? Because the film I saw on screen was the loud, sexist, regressive, violent celebration of masculinity. And I'm not even exaggerating. It is regressive, like evolutionarily regressive. But the film that I took away was a well-crafted and a highly personal snapshot of a broken soul that stresses on the need for men taking stock of their emotions and seeking help. I won't call it a badly written film. It is not a written film only. It feels like in every scene, Sandeep went to a time in his childhood and thought to himself, how can I make people who have not lived my life feel the same? I see Ranvijay as a victim more than a macho hero. So the question remains, can you learn something good from a bad film? Do we excuse Ranvijay's problematic behavior just because he himself is a victim of patriarchy and an absent father. Because trying to find the answer to this question will explain a lot of incel-like behavior of online trolls or of people like Andrew Tate, जिसका काफी influence है इस film पे, by the way. But wait, if I really like this film so much, why is this not a straight-up cheerleader review of the film? And you know how anyone who doesn't like this film is a snowflake who can't take violence. I'll tell you why. When I had watched Arjun Reddy in 2017, I was alone in a dark room with headphones on. There was just me and the film. I could interpret it the way I wanted, draw my own meaning. I actually think that more than a love story, the film was about the caste politics between Arjun and Preeti. और ये बात जब मैं किसी को बताता था, तो they would look at me like, bro, which Arjun Reddy did you watch? And I get it. It's like the maker has made a film specially for me. But when I watched Animal, there was a packed theater, around 75% filled with men. And every second, I got feedback from people around me. Cues on how I should be feeling, how the audience is feeling, the impact this film is having on people in real time. And that changes a few things about the film for me. There is a scene in the film where Bobby Deol, Abrar Haq, has just murdered someone on the day of his third wedding. Or is it the fourth? I don't even know. But his face is sprayed with blood and he forcefully starts having sex with his newlywed wife, who's pregnant by the way, in front of everyone. And once he's done, he calls for his other wives in his harem at the knife point where they have blood-soaked, non-consensual sex. Now, I'm sure the makers would have written this scene to ramp up the villainy and deviousness in the antagonist, right? जैसे एक बार जावेद अख्तर ने गब्बर सिंह के बारे में बोला था कि गब्बर is a lecherous character because they believe कि कोई कितना भी घिनौना हो, child murderer हो, drug dealer हो, but if someone forces themselves upon a woman, that's another level of villainy, and that was Gabbar Singh for them. So screenplay-wise, I think it's a perfect job. Very well-written, scripted villain character. But the response I got from a group of friends in a row behind me was, "Oh bhai, le gaya," with some chuckles and cheers as if a friend of theirs has scored on his first date. If Bobby Deol doing this on screen is a demon, an animal, what are those guys? And if someone now comes up and says, "Dekho bhai, so many people came and watched the film, they cheered in all the scenes that you wokies found problematic," what would you call that? And honestly, मुझे नहीं पता इसमें मैं संदीप रेड्डी वांगा को blame करूं या उस theater के crowd को. Pratiksha from our entertainment team has this one really nice line in their review which made so much sense to me. They say,
"It is a privilege, not watching the film, to be able to watch violence on cinema and realize that violence like that does not affect you in your daily life is a privilege."
I won't call Animal a wrong film as they do, but I can totally understand how terrible it would make someone feel when they hear the hero of the film talk about the pelvis of his loved one, and that line is supposed to sweep her off her feet. I believe कि अगर किसी filmmaker की politics को जानना हो, उसकी ideology जाननी हो, तो बस उसकी फिल्में देख लो. If that filmmaker has some cinematic integrity, you'll know कि वो उस time पे दुनिया के बारे में कैसा सोचता है. And by that lens, Sandeep Reddy Vanga is telling us that it is a man's world. He literally says this in one line. But more than that, he's telling us that he either doesn't care or cannot do anything about it being a man's world. He doesn't really want to change it. He's in this man's world, slightly comfortable in his position. He's observing it as is, sure, but not really questioning the consequences of said man's world on other non-alpha, non-man people. And it's also not a man's world like Anurag Kashyap's Gulal or Gangs of Wasseypur, where by the end, you come out a more evolved man. I was literally laughing at Sardar and Faisal Khan कि ये कितने गधे लोग हैं भाई. I hope मैं कभी इनके जैसा ना बनूं. एक बदले के पीछे अपनी पूरी लाइफ खत्म कर दी इन लोगों ने. But I already see people coming out of Animal and posing in front of that gritty Ranbir poster with a cigarette in his hand with captions like "Janwar aa gaya" or something like that. That is the difference between the two man's worlds. And talking about Anurag Kashyap, I can draw really strong parallels between him and Sandeep Reddy Vanga. Both have made super long, highly indulgent films about masculinity. Both of them have a really tight grip on their craft and seem to know exactly what they want with different departments like music, their edit patterns, and their performances. And to say the least, both of them are original as hell and make really personal films. But where I stop my fandom of Sandeep Reddy Vanga is when this cinema starts permeating into real life. In his interview with Anupama Chopra on Kabir Singh, he said कि यार बचपन में तो मैंने परिंदा देखी थी, but I didn't become a gangster. Firstly, that's not how logic works. It's a logical fallacy and an argument from personal incredulity. But secondly, he fails to recognize the difference between his films and films like Parinda. Vidhu Vinod Chopra apparently turned down a huge sum of money when he was asked to not kill off the main leads, Anil Kapoor and Madhuri Dixit, in the end of Parinda. And he said no because he was adamant on making the point that violence begets violence. This is why Satya dies in the end. This is why Tony Montana dies in the end. This is why Faisal Khan dies in the end. But if Indian men get their ego massaged after watching this film has failed. Sandeep Reddy Vanga has failed, Ranbir Kapoor has failed, we all have failed. On my drive back from the theatre, I was blasting Arjun Velli and Sari Duniya Jala Denge on repeat and thinking about the rage I would have when I would punch a wall or break my specs, and how grateful I am for therapy and for some people close to me because of whom I'm no longer in this space. I got the help that Ranbir Kapoor from Animal needed. I'm not saying that you can't like this film. Hell, I like this film. But please, for the love of humanity, do not just like this film. If you like it, please take a moment and think, why do you like this film? What emotions did these action scenes, bring within you? Did your blood boil while watching Ranbir massacre a mob in old boy style? What strings did it plug when Ranbir slashes Bobby Deol's throat while B. Prag laments in the background, "Agar tujhe ho gaya kuch, sari duniya jala denge." And if that emotion makes you feel uncomfortable, instead of getting angry or dismissive about it, stay with that emotion and try to see what it would have done to the people around you. What the breaking of this chashma and the punch of the wall would have done to your family. What did Ranvijay's bloodthirsty revenge do to his mother, his sisters? As Kendrick Lamar says in Father Time, until then, let's give the women a break from grown men with daddy issues. Now I know I'll be highly judged for liking this film, just as many people like Pratiksha and Sucharita Tyagi would have been trolled for not liking it as much. But kya kare? For a film so animalistic, pun not intended, logo ka response kahan se nuanced ho jayega. But in the end, I think I like this film more because it makes me question all of the things about myself and my definition of manhood. So, is it a good film then? Maybe, or maybe not. Tell me in the comments. I have so much to talk about and this episode doesn't even scratch the surface. So let's continue fighting in the comments and in my DMs. This was Prateek and I'll see you in the next one.